So, following a 2-2 draw with West Ham at the weekend, Liverpool's season is now more or less wrapped up. They've obviously won the League Cup, but they're out of all other cup competitions, and it now looks more or less likely that they're also out of the Premier League title race. As a result, we here at Transfermarkt are having a quick look at what's to come for Liverpool next season. Jurgen Klopp obviously has announced that he's moving on. Arne Slot, the Feyenoord head coach, is widely expected to become the next Liverpool head coach. It hasn't been confirmed just yet, but I think for the sake of this video, we can probably assume that he will be the next Anfield boss. And as a result, I'm here with Ewan and Ben today to discuss what is on Slot's entry, what's on his to-do list at Anfield. We've got 4 big topics to discuss, guys. Let's start in defence. Virgil van Dijk, club captain, player who's been very vocal this season from the highs and lows at the club. Ben, I'll start with you here. He's been linked with Borussia Dortmund. I suspect it won't be the only club that he'll be linked with this summer. Comes to the end of his season, comes to the end of his contract rather at the end of next season. He's 33, if I'm not mistaken, next season. If you're Arne Slot, you're taking a look at this team. Are you trying to figure out whether Van Dijk stays, or would you look to move him on and start afresh at in defence?
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of areas of debate with Liverpool. For me, with Van Dijk, I'd be trying to keep him. This season, he's been brilliant. I think alongside Gabriel Saliba and maybe Akanji, he's been best centre-back in the league. He's looked back to that level where he was so important to Liverpool winning their first title in 30 years. He was such a key component, and he's looked at that level this season for me. He's an absolute leader in that team. He's a club captain. There's going to be so much change this summer for Liverpool. It's going to be such a hard season. It's going to be Arne Slot, if he does get the job, he's got a real big job on his hands, because following Klopp obviously is going to have its own difficulties. I think Van Dijk is the perfect man you need for that transition. So I would be doing all I can to keep Van Dijk in the team for another season.
Yeah, Ewan, Van Dijk has actually came out. I think he came out not long after Klopp's announced departure from the club and basically said he'll have a think about it and see where he stands with stuff. Is this basically down to whether Van Dijk really still has the hunger and the desire to stay at Liverpool, or, could Slot be arriving on day one and Van Dijk could say, look, thanks but no thanks, with all the respect, I was the last manager's main man, that chapter of my career is over, and now I kind of want to move on, just as Klopp is doing?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think it's ultimately going to be Virgil van Dijk's decision more than it will be Liverpool's, given his contract situation. For Liverpool, you either sell or offer him a new deal. The summer, you don't want to run into his last run of his contract and go on a free. So Van Dijk might well say, look, I've had a fantastic time here, I won the Premier League, I've won the Champions League, it's the time for a new era. He's also the captain, so I imagine when Slot gets the job, the first conversation he'll have with any player will be with Virgil van Dijk, to assess where he's at for his future. But he might want a new challenge. He strikes me as the sort of the player who might want to go abroad and experience something different. And obviously with his contract situation, he does kind of hold the power, really, because I imagine a lot of clubs will be happy to pay what Liverpool want for him, or I could also say I've got one more season and I'll go in a free. He's still a top player. He's came back really well from that really serious injury, and I think he's probably been one of, if not Liverpool's best player this season again.
Yeah, I guess it also depends on what happens with Liverpool's other central defenders, of course. Got Joel Matip, who's obviously slightly older, quite injury prone at this point as well. Reece Williams is probably not going to get much game time. And you have kind of more younger players like Kwanzaa, for example. Joe Gomez is still, well, I wouldn't say he's trying to find his feet. He's obviously an established player, but whether he's a centre-back or right-back, hasn't quite kind of solidified that starting centre-back role. And this season it really has been mostly Konate and Van Dijk, as far as I can tell, who formed a pretty formidable partnership there. So, if Van Dijk was to move on, you would think Liverpool would probably have to bring in one or maybe two central defenders to kind of accommodate that. So, yeah, it's definitely worth to bear in mind. Another huge star, Ben, and this is the second kind of topic we wanted to discuss, was Mohamed Salah. Probably fair to say some theatrics during the West Ham game as to him coming on the pitch. He said after the match, quite dramatically, if I speak, there will be fire, in regards to his kind of disagreements with Jurgen Klopp. Two things with Salah: outstanding player, but also a player who has been routinely linked with departures from Liverpool, and probably fair to say not a player who's always gone out of his way to quash those rumours, shall we say. He hasn't exactly ran away from them. this summer may be the opportunity for him and the club to finally part ways. But again, maybe something that Arne Slot has to decide. So if you're Arne Slot coming in to Liverpool this summer rather, what would you do with Mohamed Salah?
Yeah, I think if you take this season aside, for the 4 or 5 years preceding that, Mohamed Salah, alongside Kevin De Bruyne, has been the best player in the Premier League. He's been fantastic. However, this season, even when he was scoring goals, I think Salah's been really, really poor. I think back to the home game against Everton when he scored a brace, a penalty in the tap-in. He was absolutely awful. Every time he got the ball, he was giving it away. He hasn't had that ability to jink in and out of players. Like some of the goals we saw him score last season, the one against Man City and the one against Watford, where he's going in and out of free players. He hasn't been able to produce that at all this season. He is 32, and we know there could be a big offer on the table again coming in from Saudi Arabia. I think if Liverpool can get anything more than the 65 million market value he has in Transfermarkt, I would be cashing in this summer, because unlike Van Dijk, who has still performed at a really high level this season and is a leader, I haven't seen that from Salah this season, and I think it's probably time to move on.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Ewan, because it's actually maybe quite similar to the Van Dijk situation, where he is an aging star, maybe not quite at his peak, but when I kind of look around that Liverpool front line, and I actually wrote an article on Salah this week looking at his contributions, and I completely agree with what Ben's saying in terms of, hasn't really looked his best for some time at Liverpool, but he is still their key man in attack. His goals and assists for the club are insane, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think he's still putting up maybe like 30% of Liverpool's league goals, whether through goals or assists. And I think fundamentally the issue is that there's just still no one there that can kind of step into that role. The only player who really comes close in terms of putting up those kind of numbers per game is Diogo Jota, who just time and time again has struggled to kind of prove that he can stay fit over the course of a season. So there's that obvious idea behind selling Salah, because he's been looking to move perhaps for a number of years. Maybe the club have decided now it's time to move on. But is there someone who can kind of step in there and can ooze any or calm down any concerns about the space he leaves behind?
I think that'll have to be in the transfer market. They'll have to replace him. You're not going to get a direct replacement for Mo Salah, what he's done for Liverpool. I actually think they missed the boat last summer. They should have sold him last summer when, what was the offers, like 200 million, 150, 200 million for Mo Salah for a 31-year-old. I wonder in hindsight if he sat down Jurgen Klopp maybe in a couple of weeks' time after he's left Liverpool and you say, was that a mistake not selling Salah that summer and you reinvesting money into the squad? Because he's done it before, didn't he, with Coutinho going, and obviously like Alisson and Van Dijk came in. I think he's been off it this season, like Ben said. I think he's age now. Attackers maybe had their peak a little bit earlier than maybe midfielders or defenders. I'd look to sell him this summer and replace him in the transfer market. You've got good options there already. I think Luis Diaz, Nunez, Jota, to a lesser extent, Cody Gakpo, who I'm not exactly sure about. I think you go in the market and you look to bring in a new star winger on that right side. And I just think for Liverpool, sometimes if you're starting a new era, Klopp's had this massive influence at the club. Salah and Van Dijk have been two of the biggest players in Liverpool's relative success under Jurgen Klopp. I think sometimes it's better for a fresh start and you go into a new era with new players and give it a good go.
Yeah. Well, talking about fresh ideas and fresh tactics, the next topic we want to discuss is Trent Alexander-Arnold, a player who's had, a degree of success, some criticism for the way he defends at times, but also one of the best attacking fullbacks in the world, to the point, Ben, that, there's a growing kind of debate as to whether his future at Liverpool may actually lie in the centre midfield as a central midfielder. It's no surprise that this probably coincides with the rise of Connor Bradley, who's been outstanding since he's kind of came in this season. If you're Arne Slot and you're taking a look at where your team looks and how your formation sits and who's your right back, do you then think, well, if Bradley's there at right back, do I move Trent Alexander-Arnold into central midfield? Yeah,
well, what I'm doing if I'm Arne Slot is I'm looking at how I can get the best out of Trent Alexander-Arnold, because I think he's an absolutely phenomenal player. I think few players in the world possess the ability he has. So whether that's inverting him from a right-back position and making sure you've got midfielders and defenders around him that can cover him defensively, or putting him into midfield and, like you say, bringing Connor Bradley into the right. Arne Slot, he's going to need to find his style and work out what's best for that. I think Connor Bradley and Joe Gomez is a solid defender as well. You've got two options there that can fill in a more orthodox right-back role. But it depends what he does with the rest of the defence as well, in terms of, because, most top managers do invert either fullback now. They've got a more orthodox left back in Robertson, who's really picked up in recent weeks. So whether it's just more inverting Trent and making sure the players are around him, whether a holding midfielder player comes in to support him defensively, but I would like to see Trent more in a central role and dictating the ball from deep and putting those beautiful balls in behind.
Yeah, you at times, particularly in big games, when Trent Alexander-Arnold has been kind of tasked to go toe-to-toe with top-class wingers. We've seen really good teams kind of almost, isolate him at times to try and get past him, and it has been a kind of thorn in Liverpool's side. But Ben's suggesting if you move him into midfield, you maybe get the best out of him without having to worry about him being isolated like that. What do you think? Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think Trent Alexander-Arnold's a right back? That's where he should stay, and Arne Slot maybe shouldn't shake things up too much in his first season?
See, I'm so conflicted over this one because I don't think we've seen enough evidence of Trent playing in midfield and how he can do that role. I know he played there for England a couple of times. I think one of the games against Malta, so it's not exactly the best kind of sample size or opponent to judge his effectiveness, because Trent Alexander's technical ability is as good as any player on the planet, but playing in midfield, it's a different requirement in terms of you're not always facing the goal. Sometimes you're taking the ball in the half turn, you're back to goal. I think there's quite a lot for Trent to learn to be able to go and play that position effectively. I think Ben made a great point about bringing in a defensive midfielder. I think that's one of Liverpool's priority areas to strengthen this summer, because I don't think they've had that player since Fabinho at that sort of level, certainly. So can you play with it as a right back and invert him in possession? You'll have someone covering who's got legs to get out there and cover. Or you could play him in central midfield. Ultimately, having a player who can play two positions to a high standard will benefit any manager, but I still don't really know where his best position lies, because we've not seen enough of him in central midfield.
Yeah, I guess there's also a debate as to who he takes out of the midfield, because unless he can play as that defensive player, he's basically taking a role that McAllister or Szoboszlai or Curtis Jones or Ryan Gravenberch would play typically. So it kind of moves things quite around a lot. But it'll be interesting to see what Arne Slot does. And finally, the last player we kind of wanted to talk about in this video is one who I can't seem to escape memes of on social media these days. I feel bad for the guy because I think he's an outstanding player. I think he's an outstanding striker. But it seems at this moment in time, Darwin Nunez is the butt of every joke around Liverpool. Ewan, what do you think of how he's done at Liverpool, how he's done this season? And do you think there's a future for Nunez at Liverpool under a new head coach, potentially without Mohamed Salah in that team? Or do you think Arne Slot's going to come in and say, I need consistency, I need dependable players, I cannot rely on Darwin Nunez next season?
Again, when we talk about Liverpool, there's so many fascinating subplots to the new manager coming in, and players. Nunez is one of them. Obviously, Jamie Carragher, after the defeat in the Merseyside derby, said that Liverpool should get rid. And obviously, on the other side of the defence, you had Wayne Rooney, one of the best strikers in Premier League history, saying that you should persevere with him. Again, I'm torn. He's so chaotic by nature. You never know what you're going to get from Nunez from minute to minute, from play by play. He was on fire at the start of the season with his attacking numbers, his goals per minute, assists per minute. He's just missed so many big chances in recent weeks. When it comes to the business end of the season, you need a player who's reliable and cold in front of goal, and Nunez is just not that. I would keep him around, and I think if you're looking at potentially replacing Virgil van Dijk, adding a top quality central midfield player, and also potentially replacing Mo Salah this summer, then that's going to take up a lot of funds, obviously with FFP restrictions. Obviously caveat that by getting money in for the likes of Salah and Van Dijk. I don't think Nunez becomes a priority this summer. I think we keep him for our season and see what he does, because by no means has he been Liverpool's biggest problem this season.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by this as well, because I'd love to see Nunez in a Liverpool team without Mohamed Salah in it. I do think there's a kind of degree where Salah he takes up the oxygen in the room, he demands the ball, he demands all the attention, and Nunez is a penalty box striker who's more or less had to play off Salah for much of this season and last season as well. Ben, where do you stand on this? Do you think Nunez is a player that can get better? He's a player who can maybe even step into that kind of talismanic role that Salah may move on from this season? Or do you think Liverpool need to kind of really nail down a more consistent star if they want to kind of step on from the Klopp era?
Well, I'm a massive, massive fan of Darwin Nunez. I think he's got potential that not many strikers in the world have. I think he does miss a lot of chances, but for me, it's always more concerning if a striker's not getting chances than if a striker's missing chances. Because these players are good footballers. They're eventually, if they can get that composure, they're going to get the goals. I think Darwin Nunez really, he can be a world beater. I think, like you say, I think the Salah point is very interesting. You've got a winger there that's first thought is always, how can I score? How can I give it to someone to get it back to me? Not how can I get the ball into... I'd like to see a player like Kevin De Bruyne behind Darwin Nunez with the runs he makes and see how well he does. I think he's got all the potential to go on to be a striker that can get 20, 25 Premier League goals a season. If Liverpool do consider selling him, then I'd love my team Arsenal to come in for him, because I think he would be incredible under Mikel Arteta. But yeah, I think Darwin Nunez has got the one thing: he needs to stay on side, because I can't deal with him being offside 3 times a game. That's the most frustrating thing for me. I'm not so bothered about the chances missed. I'm more concerned about him being offside and losing the whole momentum for Liverpool. But I think if you can bring in a winger to replace Salah that's a little bit less selfish and looks to get the striker involved, I think Darwin Nunez's movement's incredible. And I think he would be one of my first names on the team sheet.
Yeah, you've just kind of put that thought in my head of a strike partnership of Kai Havertz and Darwin Nunez, and
It's nice, isn't it?
must be one of the most aloof kind of... It's a nightmare in some sense. Yeah, I don't know whether it would be for Arsenal fans or for the opposition fans, but maybe a discussion for another day. Well, there we go. Arne Slot, job done. You can send us a thank you note in the post. Liverpool fans, of course, if you're watching, let us know what you think of all these discussions. Do you think Van Dijk and Salah should be moved on? What do you think of Darwin Nunez' future at the club? And where do you think Trent Alexander-Arnold should be playing next season for Liverpool? And of course, let us know what you think of Arne Slot if he is to be the man to replace Jurgen Klopp. You can let us know in the comments below. And of course, you can like and subscribe to this video as well. And until next time, we'll speak to you soon.